and there is a good chance that the problems that afflict us the most are not the great questions of humanity, such as the origin of the universe, what existed before everything, or whether we are alone here. Not because these subjects are uninteresting, but because most of us are too busy with daily problems, bills to pay, mundane desires, life's uncertainties, and the anxieties of the heart. However, few would think to seek answers to these anxieties in philosophy. In fact, philosophy has often distanced itself from real life by dealing with grandiose questions. Stoicism does the exact opposite. Seneca wrote, "There are errors committed by our advisors who teach us to debate rather than to live. There are also errors committed by students who come to their teachers not to develop their souls, but their cleverness." Thus, philosophy, the study of wisdom, became philology, the study of words. If there is any philosophical school that focuses primarily on real life, that is useful to everyone, and that remains as applicable today as it was over 2,000 years ago, it is Stoicism. What better way to describe a philosophy whose two most famous figures were Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and the most powerful man of his time, and Epictetus, a crippled slave? Two extremes that only find common ground in the third great name of Stoicism. Seneca, one of the greatest intellectuals of the Roman Empire, who went from a high position in the Senate to exile, returned to a high role as advisor to Emperor Nero, and was ultimately sentenced to death by the same emperor. The burden of leadership, the suffering of slavery, the despair of decline, and the fear of death do not seem like problems so distant from what we face today. But how did the Stoics deal with these difficulties and all the other challenges life presents? It is not what happens to you, but how you react that matters, Epictetus said. A fundamental idea of Stoicism is to differentiate between external experience, things outside our minds, and internal experience, our interpretations and reactions. Essentially, it means separating what we can control from what we cannot, and focusing our energy only on what is within our control. No matter how much effort we put in, we will never have complete control over external events, others' perceptions of us, our position in the job market, or even our health. Of course, we can and should do our best to succeed and take care of our health, but we never know what fate has in store. The only thing we have complete control over is how we interpret and react to events. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." His words take on another dimension when we remember that he wrote exclusively for himself in a kind of diary that was later published as Meditations. So, when Marcus Aurelius says, "Stop wasting time arguing about what a good man should be one," he is reprimanding himself. But in doing so, he also challenges all of us. We are reading the reflections of the most powerful man of his time, considered the last of Rome's 5 good emperors, who had no reason to stop and reflect on his virtues and vices. Yet instead of being blinded by his immense power, he worried about being a good and just man. He knew that actions spoke louder than words, and despite his vast wealth, he concluded, "Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This idea is the foundation of Stoicism and is echoed in Seneca's words. Until we have begun to live without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. We use them not because we need them, but because we have them. A thought that proves increasingly true in a world obsessed with consumerism and finds relevance in the current resurgence of minimalism as a way of life. It is remarkable that something written 2,000 years ago, when people had so little compared to today, reaches the same conclusion that we are reaching now, that our false belief in attaining happiness through possessions or by changing the external world is misguided. The Stoics were clear in stating that what must change is our internal process. Seneca wrote, "If you really want to escape the things that bother you, you do not need to be in a different place, but to be a different person. We cannot escape ourselves. Wherever we go, we will find ourselves. But can we truly find peace of mind regardless of external conditions, no matter how adverse they may be?" According to Epictetus, yes, perhaps the hardest and most difficult lesson in Stoicism, but the one that best summarizes its teachings, is his assertion, sick yet happy, in danger yet happy, dying yet happy, in exile yet happy, in disgrace yet happy. This passage would not carry such weight if it did not come from someone who spent much of his life as a slave and, according to history, was crippled by his own master. In other words, he spoke from experience, not as a theoretical philosopher writing impressive words. Epictetus, in fact, is not even his real name. It means acquired or purchased. As Seneca said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. It is important to emphasize that Stoicism does not advocate inaction in the face of injustice or passive acceptance of suffering. Seneca, for example, defended the humane treatment of slaves in his time, and Marcus Aurelius had to lead one of the greatest empires in history, making crucial decisions during a period troubled by wars and the Antonine Plague. But they believed that to generate positive change in others, it was necessary to first cultivate the 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, self-control, and wisdom. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." How much better could our lives be if we incorporated Stoic teachings? Serenity in the face of suffering, the art of living a happy life under any circumstances, courage to face unexpected challenges with justice, self-control to resist destructive thoughts, and wisdom to recognize these teachings. After all, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Even if the moral and ethical standards of Stoicism seem too high, that should not be a problem. Epictetus himself said, "I have never seen a Stoic sage, but a Stoic in training is enough." And we should not concern ourselves with perfection. When Seneca says we suffer more in imagination than in reality, it feels as though he is speaking directly to our generation. And Marcus Aurelius complements this with what is practically an antidote to victimhood. Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. It is a millennia-old philosophy that seems not to have aged a single year. It shows us the true meaning of mind over matter. This philosophy, despite its uniqueness, has many similarities with Buddhism, and may have directly influenced Christianity, even through correspondence between Seneca and the Apostle Paul. I conclude this video with Epictetus's precise definition. Philosophy does not secure external things for a man. That would be beyond its proper subject. Just as a carpenter's material is wood and a sculptor's is bronze, the material of the art of living is each individual's own life.